I've written and torn this page apart more times than I can count, but the words keep circling back like a hymn I can't silence. My name is Rebecca Lowell. I'm a pediatric chaplain at St. Agnes Medical Center, and for nearly 12 years I've sat at the bedsides of dying children reading psalms aloud when the machines could no longer carry them. It's work that requires quiet hands and steadier faith than I often feel. Most nights blur together. The antiseptic sting of the halls, the hum of ventilators, the faint trace of latex and alcohol that clings to my clothes even at home. But one night has burned itself into me in a way I can't pray away. It was a Wednesday in October, around 9 in the evening. Visiting hours had ended, the corridors hushed except for the wheels of supply carts rolling over linoleum. I had been asked to see a boy, 17, name of Tommy Wallace, who had been pulled from the wreckage of a car 3 weeks prior. By then his body had healed as much as medicine could allow, but his mind had not returned. His scans, Dr. Alan Reyes told me flatly, showed no cortical activity. "He's not there," he said, eyes fixed on the grayscale images, as though insisting on science could keep doubt at bay. When I stepped into Tommy's room, the fluorescents buzzed above like faint wasps. His mother, Janice, sat vigil at his side, her fingers threaded through his unmoving hand. I knew her face already, hollowed from sleeplessness, but still taut with the refusal to let go. "Please," she whispered when she saw me, "read to him." She had heard me recite to other families. She believed sound could reach where medicine could not. So I opened my Bible, its thin pages worn soft at the corners, and began Psalm 23. My voice was steady, practiced, the way I'd read it 1,000 times. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And then something happened that made the room tilt. Tommy's lips, cracked, pale, motionless for weeks, began to move. At first I thought it was some reflex, the twitch of a body not yet fully gone. But no. Each word I spoke he echoed, silently, but with perfect synchronization. His mouth shaped, "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures," exactly as the sound left mine. Janice gasped, clutching his arm. Sophie Clark, the intern assigned to monitor vitals, dropped her clipboard. "Do you see that?" she whispered, eyes wide, her cross pendant shining against her scrubs. The monitors continued their monotonous beeps, flat lines unchanged. There was no neurological reason for this. Dr. Reyes later dismissed it as muscle memory, though when I repeated the psalm on another night, the same thing occurred. Word for word, Tommy's lips followed mine. This went on for a week. Each night, I'd arrive after the halls thinned, and each night his mouth would trace the verses as if some unseen tether bound his silence to my sound. Sophie began to avoid the room, whispering that it wasn't holy, that something darker was animating him. I wanted to dismiss her, but truthfully, I felt unease coil in me, too. It wasn't the miracle Janice believed it to be. Miracles bring peace. This brought only dread. The final night is the one that still leaves me shaking. It was just past midnight. The wing was still, except for the whir of the respirator. I opened the Bible and began Psalm 91, my voice hushed, my lips dry. As always, his mouth followed. But when I reached the 7th verse, his eyes, closed for 3 weeks, snapped open. They were glassy, unblinking, but locked on me with a weight I cannot describe. His lips parted, and for the first time, sound came. The words were low, guttural, torn from some depth I'd never heard in a 17-year-old boy. "She is coming for me, and she will not stop." Those words are not in Scripture. I dropped the Bible. The pages fanned open, and still his voice came, repeating that same line, louder each time, until his chest heaved against the respirator. The alarm shrieked, nurses rushed in, Reyes shouted orders, and then silence. Tommy's heart stopped. At 12:43 a.m., he was pronounced dead. Officially, it was cardiac failure. That's what went in the log, what Reyes signed. Sophie crossed herself and wouldn't look me in the eye. Janice collapsed into my arms, wailing that he had spoken at last, proof his son was still with her even as he slipped away. but no one has asked me what I heard in those words. Maybe no one wants to. Since that night, every time I open my Bible, I hear him. Not out loud, not in the way you hear footsteps or wind, but in the cadence of memory that plays without permission. I'll read a passage, and underneath the verses I hear Tommy's voice threading through. She is coming for me, and she will not stop. Sometimes the pages lift as if stirred by a breeze, though the air vents are still. Once, alone in the chapel, the book fluttered open to Psalms on its own, and that whisper filled the empty pews. What unsettles me most is not knowing who she is, or if he spoke of some hallucination born of a dying brain. Rez clings to that explanation, though even his hands trembled when he signed the death certificate. Sophie believes a darker spirit marked him. Janice insists it was a message meant for her, though she cannot say what it meant. I am left between all three, a woman of faith asked to pray, yet standing before something that felt like a curse. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in prophecies torn from the mouths of the dying. And yet I cannot deny what I heard, and what I still hear. Sometimes, late at night, when I sit at my desk with the Bible closed, the pages stir anyway, and in that faint papery rustle, I hear his voice, flat, inevitable, whispering that line again. I wish I could tell you the silence brings comfort, but it doesn't. The silence is worse. If you've ever witnessed something at a deathbed that you cannot explain, I need to know I'm not alone. Share it with me, if you dare, because I fear the next time I open those pages, it won't be his voice I hear. It will be hers. See you in the next one, if you dare. And if my Bible lies open when I am gone, you'll know she finally came for me too.
Hello, YouTube family. Thanks for watching. Big love to our subscribers. You keep this channel alive. Only about 20% of viewers are subscribed, so if you enjoy the chills, hit that subscribe button. It's quick, it helps a ton, and it means more stories coming your way. See you in the next one, if you dare.
The night it began, the hospital was running on backup power. The kind that hums through the walls in a constant low vibration, like the whole building is holding its breath. I'd been chaplain at St. Luke's for almost 12 years by then, long enough to know every wing, every stairwell, every corner where the floor tiles don't quite meet. The storm outside had knocked out the main grid, and rain hammered against the windows with a persistence that made the halls feel tighter than usual, as if the weather itself was pressing in. I was walking the south corridor when the pager on my hip buzzed. Room 12, call light. That stopped me cold. Room 12 hadn't been used in decades. After the fire, they had sealed it off, gutted the walls, and left it shuttered behind a set of heavy double doors that no patient or staff member had reason to enter. The fire had taken one life, a woman whose name I didn't remember then, only the whisper that she had died before receiving last rites. I should have ignored the page, chalked it up to a malfunction in the old wiring. But I couldn't. My job is to answer calls from the dying, no matter how unlikely. The doors opened with a reluctant creak, hinges grinding like they hadn't moved in years. Inside, the air was different, cooler, tinged with that lingering sweetness of smoke long extinguished. The overhead light flickered once, then steadied, casting the room in a pale, unflattering wash. Against the far wall sat a bed. On it lay a woman, frail, her hair damp with sweat, wearing a thin hospital gown that looked decades out of date. Her chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm, and her lips moved as though she were whispering to someone just beyond reach. I stepped closer, heart pounding in my throat, and heard words slip from her cracked mouth. They were confessional, but not the kind I was used to. No ordinary sins, no small regrets. What she told me was cruelty, deliberate and calculated, spoken as though she had carried it for years and had been waiting only for this chance to unburden herself. My hands trembled around the Bible I always carried, though I could not recall lifting it. "I can give you absolution," I whispered, though the words felt like they barely belonged to me. Her eyes, clouded and wet, turned toward me. Then her voice faltered, and her hand twitched as though reaching for mine. Instinct pulled me back. I hurried into the hall, calling for Nurse Dana Whitlow. She came quickly, her shoes squeaking on the waxed floor. "Who's in there?" she asked, eyebrows knitting when I pointed to the bed. We stepped inside together. The sheets were neatly folded, untouched. The bed was empty. The monitor on the wall wasn't even plugged in. Dana's eyes flicked toward me, skeptical but soft. "You're overtired, Paul," she said quietly. "This wing does that to people." But when we turned to leave, the faintest voice followed, brushing against the air like smoke slipping under a door. "Finish what you started." Dana didn't react, though later I would wonder if she had truly not heard it or if she chose to say nothing. I tried to bury the memory under routine visits, under the steady rhythm of prayer with the sick and dying. But the call light for room 12 began to flicker at odd hours, always summoning me alone. The nurses swore they didn't page me. Dr. Neil Craver even had maintenance check the system twice, shaking his head with the thin patience of a man humoring delusion. "You need rest, Paul," he told me, "not ghost stories." He suggested I take time off. His concern was not for the dead, but for my state of mind. And yet, each time I passed that corridor, the light blinked, insistent. And each time I entered, I could hear her again, whispering the same plea. Sometimes her voice came from the bed, sometimes from the far corner where the paint still bore faint scorch marks. Always, it was the same, unfinished, incomplete. It was Clara Denton, the volunteer who'd been at St. Luke's for before the fire, who told me the rest. She was folding linens in the chapel when I asked if she remembered who had died in room 12. Her hands paused, cloth limp between them. "Her name was Evelyn," she said slowly. "She begged for last rites. The priest was delayed. By the time he arrived, the fire had already taken her." Clara looked up at me, her eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. "They said she wouldn't let go, that she swore someone would come back for her confession." I wanted to believe Clara was only indulging my unease, but the way she lowered her voice, the way she refused to meet my eyes afterwards, told me she believed it herself. I still walk the halls each night. I still answer the pages, even the false ones. Room 12 remains sealed, but the light flickers without fail, and sometimes I hear the soft scrape of movement inside when no one else is near. I have tried prayers, blessings, even silence, but nothing changes. What unsettles me most isn't her voice anymore. It's that her words have shifted. Lately, when I pass by, she doesn't beg for completion of the ritual. Instead, she whispers something new, urgent and low, curling through the air just loud enough for me to hear. Now she says, "You never left." And each time I hear it, I find myself staring at my own reflection in the darkened glass of the door, wondering which side of room 12 I truly stand on.
I don't know if what I'm about to write is confession or warning. Maybe both. I only know that silence has made it worse. The words have followed me into every chapel, every quiet corridor of the hospital, and now even into my own home, where the Bible on my nightstand rustles as if an unseen hand is flipping through it in the dark. I am not sure how much longer I can stand to hear them. It began, as these things always do, on an ordinary night. The pediatric ICU was dim, the kind of artificial twilight that hums with fluorescent fatigue. It was close to 9. The monitors around Tommy Wallace's bed beeped in steady rhythm, green lines marching across the screens. His body lay slack, intubated, the machines doing all the work. Dr. Reyes had told me earlier that afternoon there was no cortical activity left, just the body lingering. Janice, his mother, had begged me to sit with him, to read psalms, the way I often did with the children who couldn't hear me anymore. I remember the sharp, antiseptic tang in the air, the faint whir of the ventilator. I opened my worn Bible and began. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. I had read those words hundreds of times before, always steady, always measured. But halfway through the psalm, something pulled my eyes to Tommy's mouth. His lips were moving. At first I thought it was the vent tube shifting, the faint mechanical tug making it look like speech. But no. His lips were matching mine exactly, syllable for syllable. Every word I spoke shaping itself silently on his tongue. I stumbled, skipped a line. His lips stopped. When I began again, so did he. I should have stopped there. That was the rule I broke. You never let yourself believe the dead or the dying can still answer. It's a chaplain's quiet oath. We don't put words in their mouths, and we don't mistake reflexes for grace. But I stayed. I read longer, deeper into the Psalms, watching as his face, pale and gaunt, echoed me like some uncanny mirror. Sophie Clark, the intern, peeked in once, saw it too. She crossed herself and whispered, "That's not God's doing." By the third night, it wasn't only his lips. There were pauses, tiny gaps between the beeps on his monitor that matched the rhythms of the verses, as though even the machines had been folded into the cadence. Janice clung to my hand, eyes red, whispering, "He hears you. Don't stop, Rebecca. You dare stop." Dr. Reyes grew frustrated when I mentioned it. "Coincidence," he said sharply, not even looking up from the scan images he carried. "Muscle activity, nothing more." But he stopped meeting my eyes after that, and I could tell he hadn't slipped either. Then came the midnight. I will never forget the clock's glow. 12:03. I was alone with him, the hall outside utterly still, only the occasional squeak of a rolling cart in the distance. I was halfway through Psalm 77 when his eyes snapped open. They didn't flutter or drift, they snapped, wide and focused, staring straight through me. The monitors wailed, but I barely heard. His lips moved, and for the first time, sound came out, not weak breath, not broken syllables, a full, clear voice. She is coming for me, and she will not stop. It wasn't in any scripture I knew. My hands shook so badly I dropped the Bible, its pages crumpling against the tile. His eyes stayed open for several heartbeats longer, then slid shut. By dawn, he was gone. I tried to bury it in ritual. The funeral, the prayers, the platitudes to Janice, who clutched my sleeve and asked me if I had heard anything before he passed. I lied. I told her no. But Sophie wouldn't meet my gaze, and Dr. Reyes avoided the chapel altogether. The worst came after. In my own devotions, alone in the quiet of the hospital chapel, the words returned. Not my own voice, not even an echo, but his. Each time I opened the Bible, the pages fluttered as though stirred by breath, and there it was. She is coming for me, and she will not stop. Once I slammed the book shut, trembling, only to hear it continue muffled as if someone was still reading inside the binding. I brought home another Bible, fresh and unused. The same thing. Now I can't open any scripture without hearing him. Sometimes, when the wind presses against the hospital windows, I swear I hear the same cadence, like someone reciting beside me in a voice too close to my ear. I have stopped reading at bedsides. I tell myself it's exhaustion, grief, suggestion. But last night, as I walked past the empty ICU room, I saw the monitors flicker. No patient inside, no bed, just the screens. And for a brief moment, they lit up with the same rhythm as Psalm 77. I'm writing this because I don't know how long I can keep listening before I answer back. If Scripture itself can be bent, if the dying can shape words that were never written, then what exactly have I been praying to all these years? If you ever open a Bible and hear another voice begin to read alongside yours, don't finish the passage, because I think that's how she finds you. And if Tommy was right, she will not stop.